Hello, my name is Scott Palmer. And for the last 20 years, I've done two things. I worked as a commodity risk manager in the energy field, and I've owned and operated an automotive shop here in Houston, Texas. Doing the two was equated to about 60, 80 hours a week in work. And when I got to the crossroads, I thought I'd always sell my business and go into the corporate world and finish out my career. But everything pushed me in the other direction. So recently, I quit my job, and now I'm back into my shop full time. So what do I do with the extra time I get? Well, go on a road trip, of course. And where do I go? Go see family up in Cheyenne, Wyoming and Frontier Days. What do you take to the west when you go into Frontier Days in a rodeo? Well, you take your F-250, right? Nope, you take the FD. Cue the banjo. Okay, I'm packed and ready to go. It's early in the morning. I'm whispering, not in fear of waking up the possums because they're up and plenty of them. Which, on a side note, my dog thinks are little wind-up toys put on this earth purely for her amusement. It's freaking hilarious. But rather, my wife has found an abandoned kitty cat in our front drive last night coming home from the barn. I guess we're rescuing that cat, and it's been taking up residence in our mudroom until she can take it to the vet this morning. It's been saying hello, which in cat I believe is meow, and let me out, which also I believe in cat is meow, most of the night. I think it's finally gone to sleep, so I'm trying to be quiet. I don't know if it's troublesome or alarming that I've allowed more room for pre-mix and motor oil and battery tending equipment than actual clothes. I've also got provisions in the shape and form of protein shake and protein bars, some chicken breast cut up, hopefully preventing me from eating a bunch of junk on the road. I say that out loud, I actually laugh. I'll probably eat a bunch of junk on the road. Anyway, we'll do some filming on the way there, and, well, see how it goes.
Your car's running great.
Wait, stop. We have to talk about what makes this car special, and that's the Rotary engine. Notoriously unreliable, finicky, but has a cult following, and I'm one of them. In high school, I had a 1980. College, I had a 1985. And I would have bought an FD when I graduated college, but then the prices really started to skyrocket. A lot of people take these motors out and put LS motors in them, but doing that puts a lot of weight in the front end, and in my opinion, it's no longer an RX7 when you put an LS motor in this thing. All that weight in there really changes the dynamic of the car, and, well, let me demonstrate. Lift with your legs. Try that with your long block LS. There's a lot out there on these motors. YouTube, internet. I won't really bore you with all the different details of it. I thought maybe I'd go through it a little bit differently and just kind of show you the mechanical parts as they are. And so most people know, if they're looking at rotor motors, they understand how they function, basically the dynamics of it. You have these rotors inside the rotor housing. They're cantilever, or they are actually asymmetrical to each other in here. That's what allows so much balance to this motor, basically, that these things spin. There's not an up and down movement to it. These things just spin in the rotor housing like this. And they have a crankshaft in here that is offset that allows for that to happen. You hear a lot about apex seals and all the sealing and the loss compression, and that happens. Obviously this rotor is toast. You can see it was the apex seal in there is actually just almost welded inside there. But you have your apex seals, you have corner seals, you have side seals, and not all seals the compression inside these rotor housings. Now, if I spin this around, show you a little bit how this works. Here we have our intakes, our intake ports right through here. We have our exhaust ports in there through here. On the intake ports, we would have a primary injector. On this center iron right here, we have a secondary injector. The exhaust ports come out from underneath here. Right here's an interesting part right here is the oil injection inlets for the oil injection pump. This is electronic. This is a 13B. If it was a 12A, it'd probably come through the carburetor in the intake manifold. Spin this back around. Probably should have done that first. You have your leading and your trailing spark plugs. It's amazing how many people, when they put the spark plugs in, they get that backwards. As air enters into the intake manifolds and into the irons and into the rotor housings through the injectors, with the injectors and air, it's compressed, it's fired through the spark plugs and pushed out to the exhaust. Pretty simple. What that does is every single side of this rotor housing is doing one of those three things. And what it creates is a lot of heat because every cycle is a heat cycle. In a 4-stroke motor, every 4th cycle is heat stroker cycle, excuse me. And that allows for 3 parts of the cycle to allow the engine to cool off, or that cylinder to cool off. This generates a lot of heat. It also makes a really balanced engine. It makes decent power with a lot less vibration or minimal vibration on it. One other thing I like to talk about is how that is cooled and how it's lubricated. In a 4-stroke engine, you have oil seals, piston rings, and everything like that, that keeps oil out of the combustion chamber. In this motor, and I'm sure you've heard it before, oil is injected into the rotor housing to lubricate those apex seals and all the other seals and side seals, actually the corner seals. That's done multiple ways. You can do a lot of things with that. In this particular 13B motor, spin this back around, it has some oil ports right there, right in the middle of the rotor housing. That's an electronic oil metering system. If you had a 12A, I believe it would actually be through the carburetor and through the injection and through the injection ports, basically, and come through the fuel delivery. That leads me to one thing. I actually pre-mix my oil, even though I have elevated the oil injection pump to about another 25% over stock. And the reason I do that, and this is just my thoughts, I know there's a lot out there on this and a lot of debate going on, but right here, these oil injections right there, I think sometimes on some of the other YouTube channels, they've been able to display that there is a good coverage of oil through the middle of this rotor housing. In theory, when you get all that compression inside these motor rotor housing, that oil should dissipate and kind of come spread out through the level of the rotor housing. It's debatable whether or not it really does and does a really good job on that. So what I do is I do pre-mix through my tank, basically, and that actually contributes a little bit more thorough, in my opinion, a lubrication through the rotor housing in through the injection. This engine has been modified, but we really haven't gone over the top with it. The rotor assembly has been lightened and balanced. The block's been studded. It's got 99 spec turbo on it. I believe that ran it from 265 horsepower to 280 horsepower when they put on the 99 spec turbos. It has a 16-bit control module to it, opposed to the original 8-bit control module. This allows a lot of tunability in this car, especially with the oil metering system. I said before that I'm actually running 25% over the stock oil metering system. The intercooler is a bit of a homemade unit, and the battery's been relocated to the back to make space for that. But I didn't want to go with a horizontal unit or anything like that to take up too much space. I didn't want to lose the AC, and this car does have AC. It dynoed at 305 horsepower to the rear wheels. All this was put together at my friends at Rotary Performance in Garden, Texas, to
car's been very reliable. Doesn't leak a drop of oil or coolant or any fluids for that matter. It starts every single time. I've taken it to several road trips to Dallas, and I'm not even really thinking twice about taking it to Cheyenne.
The car's running great. It's behaving. Got the AC on, cruise control on. Me, on the other hand, I'm running a little slow. Getting a little bit of caffeine. Going at undisclosed speed right now. In fifth gear, this car has plenty of power. Actually, passing any car is not a problem. Any trucks, no worries whatsoever. The one thing about these cars, I've been watching the temperature, of course, and electric cars, they give you range anxiety. These rotary motors, they give you temperature anxiety. Quickest way to blow up these cars is the temperature, right? So that'll ruin a rotary motor quicker than ever. And that's the LS motors. They fix a lot of problems when they convert over to LS. They get rid of the temperature issue, reliability issues. Got a lot of power, of course, and everything. But I just can't do that. It's not an FD RX7 if you don't have a rotary in it. Also, a lot of guys put in different steering wheels, do a lot of different mods on these cars, and this car is basically stock, as I said before. And like the cruise controls on the steering wheel, I'm right now cruising away. I've got my AC on, like I said. I've got my cruise control going, and it's great. That's the way I like it. If I switched out to another steering wheel or anything like that, possibly you'll lose that stuff and lose some of those creature comforts, all for the aesthetics of the steering wheel. And that just doesn't work for me. Anyway, we're going to make our way up to Dallas. We're a couple hundred miles in, or almost. And we're going to stop off at a friend's of mine place in Garland, Texas. Works on rotaries up there. And we're going to say hi to them, then make our way on up there, and we'll be checking in every once in a while. I'm going to need fuel. These things are thirsty, so I'll get some more caffeine or so when I stop off and get some fuel. I'll check in with you later. Okay, not good. It's doing all right up until we hit about 7,300 feet. And then after that, it got hot fast. You can imagine no power. The ironic thing about it is, I'm only that far away from the crest of this peak. And I could go down that peak in neutral and cool it off. But it just wasn't worth the risk. So I shelved it right here. I'm gonna let it cool off to all the way and then get to that peak and come down. I'm back! I was 150 yards from the crest. That's it. But it got hot. Very, very hot. Very quickly. No air. The air's too thin. So I let it cool off for about an hour, got to the crest, put it in neutral. Man, that was close. Anyway, back on the road. Probably be here about an hour before I call it a night. Too much drama for the day. So, time for bed and eat food. 9 miles away. So yeah, I think this is a success. Well, half a success. We haven't gotten back yet, but we are actually, I think we're about 5,900 feet. We've been climbing an elevation all day ever since I left the hotel this morning, which means we actually been climbing a little bit in temperature. Not bad. A while back there, we got up to about 95 degrees Celsius. Right now, we're about 93. I don't think it's going to be a problem. It did get hot. We roll down the windows and turn off the AC. So I think we're cool with that. What I'm not cool with is I don't think the hotel allows me to get into the room until 2 o'clock, and it is 11 o'clock. It's either going to be a long lunch or me walking around shopping or doing something. Anyway, it's been a success so far. We had some bumps. Now we just have to make it back. Anyway, see you in Cheyenne. Welcome back. We made it. It was 2,250 miles round trip. Elevation went from 100 feet to 6,200 feet. The car got 18 miles to the gallon going there, 19 miles to the gallon going back, which makes sense. You're going uphill on the way there, going downhill on the way back. It wasn't all smooth sailing as I maybe made it seem to be in some of my clips. There are many times when I had to turn off the AC, roll down the windows, and let the car cool off. Couldn't ride in that lap of luxury, as they say. What happens basically as I start getting up in elevation and there's less dense air, there's not enough positive pressure against this radiator to keep the car cool. So if I'm going to do, say, one pull, the 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 RPMs, that's about all it has at elevation. Even though the temperatures are lower at 80 degrees to 70 degrees, the positive pressure against the radiator is just not enough to cool the car off or keep the car cool. Now, as I'm coming back down into Houston and I'm getting into Texas and I'm getting down into thicker air and lower elevation, I could do multiple pulls up to 7,000 RPM and the temperature would stay pretty consistent. I also didn't have to turn off the AC as much as I did and roll down the windows as I got an elevation. It just shows you how much benefit you get from a thicker, denser air on these cars. But overall, it was a good trip. It was a successful trip. It's good to be back. We had a good time. In the future, we're going to do segments on everything from Lambros to Lambos. You don't know what a Lambro is? Well, look it up. It's pretty cool. We're also going to do maintenance segments on everyday cars. Things that we've learned over time, my team and I, things to do and not to do on different maintenance items on your car. These aren't going to be items that you're going to pick up in any kind of manual or segment that may be out there, but just things that we've learned over the years to how to work on cars. Well, if you excuse me, I've got some cleaning up to do. A lot, actually. And an oil change. I hope you had fun. I know I did. We'll catch you next time. I've got a special car that I'm going to preview next time. One of my own. It's a TTA. Look that up. That's all I'm going to say for now. Thank you. Have a good night.
Kiki, come on. Yeah.